course, this is not a film camera, so it's digital. You understand? So it ain't the film messing up. Now, for you, sister, you have a lot of energy with you, a lot of power with you. And I'm going to give you 2 times in the day where you can perform magical rituals. And this is information for you guys too. You better write this down. It's very important.
Just want to make a few announcements because most of the people here be coming back on Sunday. So next Saturday, we have a workshop. Me and Shashatmas will be doing a workshop on colors, oils, and incense. How to use it in your life. So it's not mysticism. It's not something that's abstract. We show you how connecting to your astrological sign, connecting to the energy that's in the atmosphere as the earth is moving through its cycles and the sun is moving through its cycles. What energies are prevalent? What energies are helping you and what energies you have to be aware of that might not be in retrograde, okay? So you need to know all those things. We talk about how to use crystals in your meditation, how to use crystals in your house, how to use the sacred oils to cleanse your space and cleanse your energy. How do you protect yourself when you walk out your house? How do you smudge your spaces? You know, very simple things that you need to know every day that was part of indigenous Aboriginal people all around the planet. So this is not just African rituals. If you ran across the indigenous people in North America and South America before Asiatic and Europeans came here, they would be doing the exact same thing. If you go to Southern Asia, the Aboriginal indigenous people there all do the exact same thing. And I need to always make this clear to you. A lot of times you hear people talk about ancient civilizations much older than ancient Kemet and Kash. Okay, but I need to put this in your head, that the artifacts, the writings, and materials that was left in ancient Kash and ancient Kemet is 10 times all the rest of the artifacts on the planet Earth. And so even though it's not the oldest, it is the richest deposit of our culture on this planet. And so I don't care what scholar you are in any field, there are remnants all over the planet because this is our planet. And naturally we were places before we got here. But in terms, if you want to find the most rich culture in terms of the artifact, the Medu Neter. I mean, first of all, 50% of the Wazungu's translations is wrong. And still more than 70% hasn't been translated all the way out. So there's millions of deposits of African ancient knowledge in the Medu Neter, in ancient Kush, in ancient Kemet. And so Kemet, we like to tell you, was the mouthpiece of the internal continent. Not the do-all. People from the interior of Africa came to Kemet and studied. And this is the first time you saw the pre-ship on the level that it was on. Before it was just only small. But in Kemet, you saw the prototype of the pre-ship that you see all around the planet. That means the foundation for Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, all of those. I'm taking people this summer to Kemet, and we're going to go inside of the temple of Beni Hassan, with the ancient Mahez, with the ancient warriors. And you're going to see the brothers in tunics, long robes, one arm out, shaven heads. You're going to see the whole thing. People doing yoga postures, upside down, you know, with no hands. You're going to see the prototype of what you see all over. But the date on that is approximately 2800 BCE. The Japanese haven't gotten to Japan yet. The Shang dynasty hadn't started in China yet. The Greeks weren't even thought about yet, and Rome wasn't even a hamlet. So I'm just trying to give you just, the Olmec heads were not in place yet. So I'm just trying to give you all just an inkling. So we're going to talk about those things next Saturday. So hopefully I'll see a few of your faces.
What's the time on that?
It's 20, the Kemet. Yeah, that we have flies out there. That's 3,500. Yeah, that's 3,500. They're on the wall. They're everywhere. Okay, thank you.
All right. Give the brother a hand. Brother Fadishi. This is lovely wife. Invite us to queen over here, but James, please come over here. All right. So we're going to get it started. We can't wait for the for the $15 crowd to come. I got copies of the Dominican Today. Last week we talked about the gold that they were digging up in the ground in Haiti. So anybody need that article to prove, to show and prove it wasn't a natural phenomenon. Also, I got the seaweed that we talked about when I did an excursion up to the Maroons area of Nova Scotia. I hooked up with some brothers up there, and they're going to be sending me hand-picked fresh seaweed. So I have some back there. We explained all the science behind it, and I also have some documentation on it. In a second, I'm going to introduce this brother, but I just have to mention this. There was a sister here last week when we were talking about Haiti. And I don't know if she, some people can't accept truth subconsciously, so they put up a shield sometimes. And we're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, we just deal with the truth, basically. So she had about 5, I think, what she said, 5 people that died in Haiti?
7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that my queen, she takes pictures all day long when we come to these classes, but none of the pictures would turn out like this. Now this particular picture, I'm gonna pass it around so you can see it, but I'm gonna hold it up first. And if you look very closely, you'll see her sitting here.
Here she is.
Oh, here she is. I want her to hear this, so come on in, assistant, so you can hear this.
I'm very famous, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so she had, how many relatives did you have pass away in Haiti?
I thought my brother was gone, but we found him. But no, my friend lost, I think, 14 or 15 people.
Wow. Wow.
All family members.
So we were here talking about this situation in Haiti and what had happened. And you can see me standing there with the paper holding it. But here you are, sister, here, in this picture here. And if you notice over the top of her head, you'll see this huge red and black entity. You can actually see through it. Now the entity is red and black, so that's dealing with a leg off. Now if you look closely at this picture, which I'm going to pass around, and I also have a copy of it that I actually drew lines around in case you have a problem seeing it. You'll see this young lady here, you'll see a spark of light right on the forehead. You'll see an entity over here. You'll see an entity back here. I mean, they're all over the place. But this is the picture where I outlined it. If you can get a good shot of that. All the entities that, now these entities are most likely some kind of way connected to you. And what I wanted to direct to you personally is that you have extra powers coming to you. You have the ability now to tap into energies that left the physical realm that are really willing to work with you. But at the same time, there could be entities that you need to tell them to go to their next incarnation because they could have become trapped if they were Christians. And once you become trapped on the as an astral entity on the physical realm, you just continue to walk forever until someone tells you that you're dead and you need to move on. That's why you should go and see the Civil War ghosts still walking back and forth. They still think that they're in the Civil War, it's 18-something, and they can't find their house. There's all new land and new buildings up there. Someone has to go and tell them. All right? So I'm going to pass the pictures around. Please give this one back to me. This one you can have, sister, when it gets your hands, and you can take a look at it, and you can decide or decipher, you know, in your life. Is there a positive energy or a negative energy? I personally think it's a positive energy. Okay, so we pass these around. With that, we got a very brilliant, intelligent brother, and we go way, way back. And this brother has been bringing powerful, powerful information, and he shows me information that he don't even talk about and stuff that I deal with. And I know he's into the sciences, and I know he knows the science. So I'm going to take no further ado but to introduce this brother. And here he is, all the way from Syracuse, New York, part of the Moorish Science Temple, Brother Sharif Bey. Give him a big hand.
Would any of you mind, I mean, this is a very, comfortable setting. It's not what I'm normally used to when it comes to speaking. Would you mind if I just took a seat?
Yes, take your chair, brother, and sit right in front.
Very nice. First, I wanted to rise and give praise to the good God Allah
Father of the universe, honors to his prophet Noble Jawali, honors to all of you here, and honors to everybody who thinks, acts, and labors for the upliftment of fallen men. Peace.
Hey.
I don't want to block the heat for everybody. So,
We got our own heat.
all right.
It's actually very warm in here.
Yeah.
To me.
All right. Well, what I wanted to I had a number of things that I wanted to speak on and relate, especially with regards to the Prophet Noble Jawali, with regards to the Moorish Science Temple of America, and specifically with the ideal or the concept of spirituality. What's happened a lot of times, and I'm sure there's a number of very learned people here from various schools. What happens with us, with our people, what happens with people in general a lot of times is that we used to say that the masses, the generality of people, are easily led in the wrong direction, are hard to lead in the right direction. And also, well, there was a, there's an old, very popular Buddhist story about a master trying to convey a message to his students. And he's pointing at the moon to teach them a lesson. But he's ticked off at all of the students because all of the students are looking at his finger instead of the moon. Right? That is a very prevalent condition, or an example of human weakness. And this is what we're out to combat, is human weakness. My initial topic was what some people would call metaphysics. I was very pleased to hear the brother say, listen, you know, or to speak on the topic and say that these things are, we're not here to mystify, we're not here to, you know, bedazzle you with a lot of jargon and talk about, you know, this grand convergence or that cosmic shift. You know, spirituality is a real and tangible and functional thing. And what ends up happening a lot of times, again, like, you know, the students looking at the teacher's finger instead of the function of the finger itself, which is to point away from itself to something greater, we get caught up in a lot of the jargon and a lot of the technical jargon of these things. We get lost in the toolbox and forget that the tools have a purpose, and forget that we're supposed to actually work with the tools, and that the actual work done is on ourselves. You know. So my topic was functional spirituality from the perspective of Prophet Noble Jawali. With regards to the Moorish movement, there's been a huge storm of misinformation, misunderstanding, you know, with regards to Prophet Noble Jawali. There's a lot of myth around, there's a lot of urban legend around about the man, about his mission and what he did. Well, the best person to speak on these matters is Prophet Noble Jawali himself, right? When we talk about research, you know, a lot of us have books. I read, you know, voraciously, and I love to research. And I remember years ago while I was in college, this individual who was a historian was telling me, he said, well, Sharif, if you had, what would be the best way to research? I said, if I had a time machine. Just go right back there to the moment and be a fly on the wall, and I'd get it right there from the proverbial horse's mouth. And he says, exactly. But what if you could do that? I'm like, that'd be a great thing. He goes, yeah, that's what minutes are for. That's what these types of things are. This is when you get the general history book, what you're getting is the author's interpretation of actual events. Well, though that interpretation is colored by his own personality, his own passions, his own agenda, personal, political, social, whatever. So to really understand, and this is beyond the scope of discipline for most of us, to really understand what we're getting from the generality of history books, we have to research the author. You know, this is where a lot of us went wrong, us, myself included, because I was one of the people that spearheaded a lot of this. This is where a lot of us went wrong in the early 90s with the whole sovereignty demonstration and connecting that with what we thought was the Moorish movement. Okay, with what we thought was the Moorish movement. We saw a lot of great things and it was connected with rights or what we thought was birthrights. We said, wow, this is functional. We can run with this. Got in a lot of trouble. Got many of our people unsuspecting in a lot of trouble. And I still see it happening over 20 years later. Some of the same things that we did in the early 90s, people are doing today. Quoting me from the early 90s. And you know, so a lot of what I'm doing now is penance work. It really, really is. You know, what we failed to do was research the origins of what people call the sovereignty movement. All right, I want to touch on it just really briefly, and then we'll get in our topic. The origins of the authors of it were European states' rights advocates. Most of them, I know them personally. Most of them were Korean War vets. Some World War II vets. All, you know, very strict Bible Belter Christians. Not that that's a bad thing for them. But the fact of the matter is that their agenda, their use for the tools were designed for political anarchy. That's what they're designed for. Not to bring together people as a nation, as a community, but to actually break it apart. This was the purpose. This was the purpose. Because they see themselves in a civil war with their own people. This is where they see themselves. They see themselves as fighting a civil war for a country or for control of an entity that they've already lost. So the whole driving without licenses and all of these types of things was designed, I'm quoting one of the major players in this thing, it was designed to socially and economically bankrupt the system. That's what it's designed to do. In fact, it's anti-national.
Is that a good thing or bad thing, brother?
Well, it all depends. And see, this is the quandary that we found ourselves in many times. I see brothers and sisters finding themselves in today, 20 years later. They will either, you know, by whatever means, attempt to extricate themselves from a foreign system, but have no system to go to. So you have brothers and sisters say, hey, I'm sovereign, but they're squatting in a property under adverse possession that has no heat or light, and they've got children. And they're just waiting for the police to roll up. That's the situation. That's not sovereignty. Sovereign means the king or the ruler. And we never begin to use, Prophet Noble Drali said, if I can get you to think, you can save yourself. In our household, is everyone sovereign? Exactly.
Not the kids.
Exactly. There's only one sovereign. Maybe two.
Maybe.
Right? Now think about it. If sovereign means the ruler, how can there be a sovereign without subjects? There's no such thing as a nation of just sovereigns. It doesn't exist. It's impossible. It defies common sense. We don't have this condition in our households. We would, as a matter of fact, if we had this condition in our households, what would we call it? Open, yes sir, open rebellion. That's what we would call it. But we fell into this situation because we picked up tools that were designed for a use that had nothing to do with us. And then what happened over time, the name Moorish got connected to it. So nowadays when you hear Moorish, people think law. Moorish, you think sovereignty. No. No. It's not what these things are. You know, Moorish American literally means descendants of Moroccans, a political ideology, and born in America. Born in America does not mean United States of America. America is land. That's territoriality. Moorish Moroccan is political. That's nationality. There's nationality, there's territoriality. I was born on American soil. Now, of course, to us in 2010, and the generality of people in 2010, that sounds crazy. Now, Brother Sharif, you don't know what you're talking about. Most people don't, that's not, most people wouldn't agree with you. When the Prophet told us that, you know, that's not proof of truth. It's the generality in there. So, what is the truth of the matter? What is America from the international, the national and international perspective? Not from the domestic. How many of you are familiar with Monroe Doctrine? Familiarize yourself. If we're a nation of people, we should think like nationals. We shouldn't think like cows that know nothing past the fence. That's domestic. We should know what's on the other side of the fence. Right? So, what does America mean to Hugo Chavez? Whether you like him or not, he's a leader of an American state. How many of you are familiar with the OAS? Organization of American States. Get familiar. How many are familiar with the PAU? Pan American Union. Get familiar. This all relates. We'll get to it in a second. Get familiar with the Organization of American States. Because the name itself implies what? The 50 domestic states of the United States of America? Absolutely not. This is Civics 101. This is 10th grade civics. Well, what used to be 10th grade civics. They don't teach this stuff anymore. The word state is analogous to nation. There's a state in what there's a definition of a state in international law. That's a nation. That's a nation. All right? So Mexico is an American state. But they don't answer to the Constitution of the United States. This is actual fact. Haiti is an American state. Peru is an American state. Nicaragua is an American state. You see? This is powerful. It's simple, it's elementary information, but it's powerful. Because it changes your thinking. When the Prophet taught us in Key 14 the questionnaire, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Doesn't mean we're born in the United States of America political ideology or political structure. It means we're born on American soil. This is what it means. We are Americans. We have just as much right to this land. Our physical construction, our flesh and bones and blood is of the same composition of the land that we're standing on now. This is a spiritual thing. We're going to get into that as well. I just wanted to touch on that really quick. All right? Now, functional spirituality. from the perspective of Prophet Noble Drew and the Moorish Science of America. First, let's lay some ground rules, or some groundwork. The objective of what we're talking about, or what I like to speak about today, is to enable us to move beyond what we call spiritual speculation or ivory tower spirituality. I'm sure the brother here, as a teacher in these methods, or in this particular, in spirituality, and other people here as well, will appreciate what I say about ivory tower spirituality, i.e. that type of individual that reads a lot of books and can tell you the color of each chakra and what, they can tell you all those things. But when you look at the benefit, when you look for the benefit in their everyday lives, which is the signal, indicator of accomplishment, of spiritual accomplishment, you see nothing. They have the same issues you do. We all have the same issues. But it's how we deal with them, or not, that determines our level of accomplishment spiritually. This is powerful. Because we're conditioned to believe that spiritual accomplishment means I float on a blue cloud and see Buddha. Or I do some old mystical, magical, not that they say these things don't exist. But the true mark of real spiritual accomplishment is the ability to deal with our everyday issues from an enlightened perspective. So that people marvel at how you're able to hold the world on your shoulders. How are you able to do that? How has this man right here been teaching martial arts longer than I've been alive? And look as young as me. Right? These are marks of spirituality. Back in the old days, in the nation of God, the nurse used to say, understanding is the best part. Why? Because I don't have to ask you. I can see it.
Come on.
I don't have to ask the question. I can look and go, all right, here it is. You see? This is the mark of spirituality. Functional spirituality means that it's a working component. It's not just me being able to quote, from Keter to Malkut, or from, so what? The Christians quote from Keter to Malkut every time they say the Lord's Prayer. They do. If you know the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, you will hear it. When it says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, where? In Malkut, as it is in Keter. In other words, on the plane of manifest, as it is on the higher planes. What's that? Just another way of saying as above, so below. So when it's done on the higher planes, all we got to do is fold up and wait for time. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen in a million years. We guarantee it's going to happen. It's going to manifest. And if we're truly spiritual, time doesn't matter. That's the first thing the prophet told us. Time never was when man was not. So we win in the body or out. Either way. All right. Again, we want to move from beyond spiritual speculation into the operative realm. I want to touch on two basic ideas. Again, I know this is old hat for many of you, but I just want to lay the groundwork. All right. What we call ideal and form. Right? In the Chinese martial arts, there's a style called Ji Yi. It means form of the mind. Meaning, what's in here manifests purely in the physical, and it's identical to the idea, or it matches and corresponds to the idea. It seems so simple, but it's very powerful. It's a very powerful thing. A great European man once said this. He gave his definition of what we call magic. He said, the definition of magic is to cause change in conformity to the will. Then he said this, but to will anything other than the supreme will is to wander further away from it. He said, to will anything other than to give up your puny individual will to the will of the divine is evil. Then he went even further. He said, Oh, he said, to our complex minds, such a simple thing is damn near impossible. Hence, training is necessary. Then he took it a step further. He said most people are ataxic. He said they cannot coordinate their mental muscles to accomplish an organized task. They don't have a will. They only have a set of wishes. Most of them contradict each other and at death cancel each other out. Sounds like Islam to me. And when I say Islam, I'm not talking about the practice that Prophet Muhammad of 570 AD brought to the people that he was sent to. Again, we're talking about ideal and form. So ideal is the pure common root, the lowest common denominator, the inner reality and understanding. That's why Prophet also taught us, he said, the finite mind cannot comprehend things infinite.
Yep.
But it said the finite mind can't do that.
I self-Lord in this?
Here we go. But who's the I is the real question. Now, that's what ideal is. Ideal is indescribable. Ideal is unnameable. You can't give it a name. You cannot describe it with your mouth. Impossible. Uh-oh. Brother Shreve's getting spooky on us now. Uh-oh. I can prove it really simple. Right? Back in the days, Nation of Gods and Earth, right? The first thing we learned was what? Supreme mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
We taught that, and it's a universal truth. Mathematics is the language of the universe. It is the universal language. Everything speaks and resonates and vibrates in terms of number. Everything. Do we agree?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody understands this, right? I'm going to give everybody 10 seconds to describe or define the number 5. That's an attribute given to the number by one particular individual before that man was born. Well, and again, that's an attribute. That's not a definition. Somebody define it exactly, brother. I already see it exactly.
Archetype? Let's see.
That's an attribute as well. That only, at best, can point you in a particular direction.
Right.
But at the end of the day, not one person here can verbalize the meaning of the number 5, or the number 2, or the number 623. It doesn't matter. It's impossible to verbalize, but everybody understands what 5 is.
What about measurement?
Every number is a tool of measurement. No number is greater than the other when it comes to measurement. But the fact of the matter is what is the number saying? If it's a language, what's the number saying? You know it. Your tissues know it. Your spirit knows it. But you can't say it. Congratulations. How many of you all have heard the word gnosis? Direct knowledge. Now you know what it is. No longer a mystery. Everyone knows what the number 3 is. You can't say it. How many of you have heard of the Taoist master Lao Tzu? Wrote the Tao Te Ching. What did he say about the Tao? If you can name it, it's not the Tao. As the brother said earlier, all of this is universal. This is the inner understanding. Now, the outer expression is what we call form. Now, that changes. The outer expression is what we call form. Form and shape is how the ideal expresses itself. This is deep, people. You'll see in a second. It's very simple, but it's very profound. The ideal expresses itself through form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But is the form the truth?
Your truth.
Just an expression of the idea.
Thank you, brother. The form is not the truth. It's not. The form is a manifest. Prophet taught us about that too. Right? He said that there's ought and naught in the world, that's all. Truth and falsehood. In the world, there's only 2 things, truth and falsehood.
Reality and actuality.
Truth is what is.
We say life-giving and life-threatening.
There you go. art is what, or falsehood is what seems to be. We're not saying falsehood is bad. We're saying falsehood is that which seems to be. What's your name, brother?
Steve.
His name is Steve. When you have to go to the bathroom, do you say Steve has to go to the bathroom? What do you say, brother?
Just go.
But what do you say if you have to go? What do you if you said it? If you wanted to verbalize? Say it again.
Alright.
Ooh. You don't say Steve. He says I. We all say what? We all say I, don't we?
Right.
Back in the days, right? Nation of God's earth. Oh, by the way, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the More Science Temple of America teaches the same thing in this respect. We used to say man is God, right?
Right.
He says that in chapter 1 of the Quran of the More Science Temple of America, he says, Allah and man are one. While Allah lives, man cannot die. I agree 100%. But here's where the problem comes, people. We've mistaken form for ideal. The mask gets stuck to our face. The mask isn't us. So we say God is man, I agree, but here's the question, people. What is man? Is this man? Uh-oh, consciousness. Man is the ideal. It's not in flesh to think or bones to reason, people. This is another reason why in real Islam, you ask even the Orthodox scholars, one of the mainstays of real Islam is that it is never taught that man was born in sin. When I say man, I mean humanity. It was never taught that man was born in sin. It's not in flesh to think or bones to reason.
You know, I think they miswrote it. It should have said skin instead of sin.
You see? That's so, you know, I remember my older brother, my stepbrother years ago, got one of the worst beatings of his life from my mom. When he did something wrong, and she said, "Did you do that?" He says, "No, my hand did it." That's what we sound like, though. As a grown adults. We do. You see? So, form and ideal. Ideal is the pure principle. Unexplainable. Incomprehensible to carnal minds. But that principle needs expression. This is where form comes in. Does this make sense? All right. So form is the various reflections of the ideal, because the form can change. Form changes. Right? Prophet taught us the difference between force and power. He said force is omnipotent. Power is a manifest of force. Understand?
Yep.
So power has a beginning and an end. Force is omnipotent. To make power, we borrow from the omnipotent and then channel it towards our means for what we need for that moment. So in this case, power is a manifest. Force is the ideal. Power is a form. Force is an ideal. All right. The ideal is a universal constant, whereas form may vary. The form should, now here's deep, this is deep. The form should ideally reflect the peculiar culture of the group. This is big. The form should ideally reflect the peculiarities of the group. Does that make sense? Let's give some examples. Here we go. How many of you are familiar with the Sefer Yetzirah? The Sefer Yetzirah. One of the 3 books in what's called Jewish mysticism. There's the Sefer HaZohar. There's the Sefer Yetzirah and the Sefer Bahir. In the Sefer Yetzirah, it's described, God describes man, and said that, but man, the form of man, said that man's form, not man himself, but man's form was so perfect, God chose that form as his own. That's what they say. So, what do we have in terms of form and ideal? Wow. Now, let me repeat that. The form should ideally reflect the particular or the peculiarities or the particular culture of the group. This is a simple thing. This is why every nation's God looks like them. You understand? This is how nationality is a spiritual thing. Even in the legal definition. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th degree. I've been quoting this since when, brother? Oh my goodness.
Since they made the dictionary.
Black's Law, 4th edition. Nationality. That quality or character that arises out of the fact that a person belongs to a nation or a state. That's the definition. But quality and character are intangible things. Ooh. Aren't they? But they have to be fleshed out through action. It says that quality or character that arises out of the fact that a person belongs to a nation or a state. This is deep. I don't have a shadow diagram. Don't worry about it. I can draw it in the air. Everybody can see it. Everybody can see it. Let's say we have 4 circles. Each circle enveloping the other circle. 4 of them. The core circle, we have spirituality. You know our people nowadays, man. And no disrespect to anyone, please. We're all friends. No disrespect. Our people, man. How did the prophet describe it, and then later on Elijah Bible described it the same way? Hard-headed, stiff-necked, and rebellious. Never did anything except at the point of service.
I'm going with Dawood on that one when you say yo people.
There you go.
With Dawood on that one.
So, you know, so we don't want discipline. We hate that.
Yeah.
So what do? Man, I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual. Okay, let's go with that. Listen, first of all, no argument for me. Spirituality is the core ideal. It is. It's the core ideal. But with no mode of expression, what do you got? A bunch of good ideas. So what comes on the outer circle? It's just like yourself. Man is not the body or the soul. But what would you be without a body? A good idea. You know what you would be? You'd be that twinkle in your father's eye when he saw your mother walk across the street and he kept walking.
Yeah.
He just kept walking.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. He'd just be a good idea. You understand?
That's
Again,
right.
functional spirituality, if it's not real, what's the point? Okay. So, in small circle, we have spirituality / faith. Uh-oh. He's asking us to, like, believe in air castles now. He said that word faith. That's a bad word. Even from, now if we analyze the language, even from Paul in the Bible, his definition, that's the one that's most often quoted. Listen to the words. He said, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Substance and evidence are tangibilities, people. The faith is the ideal. Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the More Science of America, the mission statement on the back of our questionnaire said, right? To propagate the faith and extend the learning and truth of great Prophet Ali in America. The faith of who? The faith of Muhammad. What was the faith of Muhammad? Muhammad was taught by a man. All the scholars admit it. He was taught by a man named Jibril. but yet he was called what? Prophet of Allah. So the faith of Muhammad, in other words, the core ideal of Muhammad, was not his practice. That's the outward expression that we all, of various levels of activity, begin to confuse with the ideal. We say Islam is praying 5 times a day and facing the east and saying, Assalamu alaikum, Islam. It's not Islam. That's a practice. That is a mode of expression of your Islam or inner peace. That's what that is. Understand? So, in the inner circle we have spirituality. The outer circle, the mode of expression. So inside spirituality, faith. The outer circle, practice, religion. Best believe, people, however we say, the prophet taught us that man's ideal is his God. Man's ideal is his God. The ideal. Man's God today, tomorrow isn't God at all. Man's as man's ideal grows or changes, his God does. So best believe, people, what you practice is your religion.
That's true.
Everyone here is religious, or else you don't have a body. You're just a good idea.
True though. As you gain knowledge, you're right. Your God does change. I started off with the white Jesus with the blonde hair. I ain't got that one no more. You know.
As man unfolds,
I got horns and whatnot.
exactly. As man unfolds, his God unfolds.
Yeah.
Man's God today, tomorrow isn't God. Prophet Raleigh taught us that. So, whatever you practice, however you reflect your inner, true inner spirituality or level of accomplishment spiritually is your religion. If you just chase the money, chase the money, chase the money, we know who your God is. If you chase sex, we know who your God is. Because we see your religion. Religion just means practice. It's outward expression, people. I want to touch on that for a second. A lot of us are like, a lot of our people, I'm not saying people here, I'm saying in general, a lot of our people are like, man, the hell with religion. The hell with these organized religions. We don't need those religions. Those are all invented by so-and-so and so-and-so, and you know, we don't need that. We need to throw that away. Now, think about what it is. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. Think about what we've just done. But these same brothers, if you say, well, brother, throw away your guns, you're out of your mind. We need them. We need those. Whoa, 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 whoa. Did you make them? Whose weapon are they? Oh, we use a different set of logic now. Totally different set of logic. And fail to recognize the fact that those expressions, including Roman Catholicism, are the biggest guns on the planet. And they're used on you every day. Here's the worst part. Let's talk about the archetype. We're going to get into archetypes. So we're not going to get into the argument about the historical Jesus versus the prophetic Jesus versus the archetypal Jesus. We're not going to get into that argument. The Apostle Paul in Romans 1st chapter solves the argument. In one sentence, he talks about the historical Jesus and the archetypal Jesus, separating the two. Oh, they're two different things. It's right there in the Bible. Romans 1st chapter, 1st through 4th verse. There it is. But anyway, let's talk about Jesus as an archetype, as a weapon. Whose gun is it? We look real crazy throwing that gun away, or worse, giving it to the open enemy. Don't we? We look real crazy. We do. Whose weapon is that? Whose man is Jesus? This is big. Whose man is he? Michael Jackson still hasn't come close to the world impact that this man has. Whether he physically existed or not is not the issue. This is big. We're going to touch on more of it a little bit later. Let me go further. First, again, in the circle, we've had spirituality, faith, outside the expression of that which is practice, or what we call religion, right? Outside of that circle, we have culture, community, how we relate to each other based on the spiritual commonality, the expressed spiritual commonality. Does this make sense?
Yep.
This is culture, community, how we come together. The fourth circle, what do we have now? Law and nationality. Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. I will do so.
Where'd you get that chart? Mineral solo? The mineral chart, solo?
No, Museum of Natural History.
So again, people, we will do it this way. Community. 4. Law. Nationality. One, two, three, and can you see this? So, within the inner circle, spirituality of faith, that humanity is of divine origin and bears within its heart the seed of that divinity. This is spirituality in anybody's book, in any time or climate, anywhere on the planet. Religion or practice, second circle, that it is humanity's duty to manifest the divinity, to transform its surroundings, to further demonstrate that death and backwards evolution are abnormal and accidental. Let me repeat that one. To further demonstrate that death and backwards evolution are abnormal and accidental by regaining its former state of integral immortality. Does immortality mean you stay in this body, people?
No.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What's the question?
She asked, the question she asked was a very good question. Can I give an example of backwards evolution? Let's use us. I was talking about this.
I was thinking about it.
Let's talk about ourselves. How old are you, sir? If you don't mind me asking.
Hey, 57.
57. You a homeowner? The vast majority of people his age, amongst our people, are homeowners, or were homeowners. A generation later, retrograde evolution. Now that's not the norm.
That's true.
It's not the norm.
It's
You know what the norm is? The norm is Asiatic males seeking out women that are homeowners or close to, and trying to appropriate. We don't even think nowadays in terms of ownership as Asiatic men nowadays. This is a small but profound example of retrograde evolution. These things aren't being taught, these principles are not being instilled. So a generation later, it's lost on a whole group of the population. This is retrograde evolution. I remember hearing stories about my grandfather, and I'm like, man, I never met him, he passed away before I was born. I'm like, this man must have been the mayor. He had his own electronics business. He did all kinds of work for some very famous people. I'm like, wow. And then I was offended, I was hurt because I had never known these things. I found out when I was an adult. I'm like, why wasn't this ever taught to us when we were young? Why weren't we told these things? I may have had an interest in doing what he did.
Yeah.
I may have been able to duplicate it and been a lot more successful early on in life. This is an example of retrograde evolution. Let's go back to the 1920s. How many of you are familiar with Marcus Garvey?
Yes.
His magazine, The Negro World. Well, think about this, people. Through the Negro World, through the Negro World magazine or your journal, do you know how many people wrote in that journal? Do you know how some of the people that were contributing writers to the Negro World? How many of you have heard of H.G. Wells?
Yes.
How many have heard of Annie Besant? Yeah. Look up Annie Besant. Any of you people familiar with esoteric or occult studies, look up Annie Besant.
How you spell that?
B-E-S-A-N-T. She was a contributing writer to the Negro World. H.G. Wells. Think about it just on a simple level. The average person in Chicago or Detroit or wherever the paper was, the average Asiatic, can pick it up and read about world events as they're related to us. This is 2010. Can we do that now? Retrograde evolution, people. We're dumber now than we were in the 20s.
They're dumb enough.
You see what I'm saying? We're dumber now than we were then.
Yeah, you're right.
We're
man.
less
It's,
informed now than we were then, and this is the age of instant information.
Yep. Sometimes
We're
I
less
gotta,
informed.
sometimes I gotta explain the simplest thing that we used to just know. It's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're less informed now than we were then.
Yeah.
So this is an example. All right. Let's go on. So, all right, let me repeat that part. Again, religion and practice, the duty. That is humanity's duty to manifest the divinity, to transform its surroundings, to further demonstrate that death and backwards evolution are abnormal and accidental by regaining its former state of integral physical immortality. The next circle, culture, community. To think, speak, and act as if all is overseen by invisible witnesses, not perceivable to the carnal eye, so as to remain blameless in the sight of others. I remember years ago listening to Colin Powell talk about a job that he had at the Coca-Cola plant, sweeping up, mopping up. And he was in the plant when nobody was there. But he was taught that to always work as if someone is always watching.
Right. That's right.
And he found out later that someone was. This is how we have to treat each other, how we have to conduct ourselves. This is how we deal with each other, or should. Just that simple thing. As if someone is always watching. We say we love each other, but not really. Because we don't deal with each other that way. We pay lip service to it. But we don't deal with each other. I know Europeans that deal with each other that way. I know other people of different nationalities, they deal with each other that way. They don't deal with you that way, but they deal with each other.
Boss.